Okay. Can you, hang on, everyone on Discord, can you hear me on Discord? Can you hear now? All right, perfect. All right, Blake. Let me double check that this is live on LinkedIn because that's other big fun stuff. This is what the problem is people with having 40 million different things running at once. So we can maximize how many people see this. All right. Seems like LinkedIn's live, and that's the super important one. All right, Blake, welcome to Office Hours, and thank you for being an incredible mentor. If you would please introduce yourself to everyone.
Yeah. So done this quite a lot. So probably changes what I actually say in this portion all the time because yeah, it's off the cuff. But yeah, my name is Blake Baxter. So I'm the co-founder and co-CEO of Immersive Enterprise Laboratories, IEL Studios. We're an independent animation studio, and I also have an investment group based in Singapore called BlackRun. I have my background is the Cliff Notes version is essentially 15, probably nearing 20 years now in family office, VC, and private equity advisory. And it's always been around emerging technology. I kind of have an overall life thesis, if you will, of things that can create abundance by lowering the barriers of entry and unlocking the true potential in people from around the world that typically have financial barriers from them being able to do certain things. Um, Beyond that, background in socioeconomic theory, that's essentially what I was utilizing to cut my teeth initially in the world. I had an ultra high net worth, high profile mentor, and so I was able to see things at a very young age, how they were operating around the world in general. Yeah, I think that's about it, Gary. Don't you think? So.
That's a good starting point for sure. Yeah, I'm curious. I think while we get some questions in from everyone, please use the text chat to post your questions. I will relay them to Blake so he can answer them. Provide as much context as possible, and if you don't really know what to ask, you can share what you're working on and what you're challenged with and what you might be nervous about as a founder, as an employee, as a potential investor, whatever it is. Because yeah, as you just heard, Blake has so much experience in all these different areas involved in entrepreneurship and being successful that he's gonna have some wonderful advice, insights, feedback, and answers for you. So don't be shy. Um, yeah. That said, because you have such an extensive background, I'm kind of curious, for everyone listening, what your journey's been like and what's been kind of the most challenging emotional aspects of that, where you have a certain path that you think you're going to go down, but then you either get derailed because of outside factors or you realize that there's another opportunity for you that you feel more connected to or you feel might be necessary to take. I'm just curious, like, how you experienced that and how you manage that, because I think everyone, as most people realize, either through their own personal experience as they get older or from just experience, like talking with other people who are a little bit more experienced in the world, that what you plan is usually not how things go. So I'm really curious about this. Why we like take some questions.
Yeah. No, I think that is a really great question in general, Gary. Just because what used to happen, like I say this all the time, like it is so great to hear success stories, right? But at the same time, I'd rather listen to all the failure stories that are out there, because that's where you're actually going to get a lot of the learning. Because the success stories, what someone did, let's just throw it out there. When Facebook started getting up and going, you can no longer do that as you can't replicate that, right? And I'm not saying it's like dumb luck by any means, but what I'm saying is that like what was used in one point in time and one case, you just can't replicate that, right? And you see an industry shift where it used to be people were able to raise money for the MVP based off just an idea and their network of investors, right? And then it's turned into, well, we need to see an MVP, and now it's we need to see traction and whatever KPIs all the metrics that are out there to drive it forward. And what I use that to go back to is where I think it comes to, and I've used this philosophy, is where you have to be able to keep the train on the track. To your point, Gary, right? And if you're not derailing it. It's looking at it as a way of like how to use the switches, right? Of moving from track to track, right? To have different destinations that are happening and how to plan for that, but always continue momentum, because so often investors know, right? And I know this personally, right? That like if someone comes to you and they say that the only thing holding me back is money for scale, you just gave them keys to the kingdom basically, because they know that you're under such a stress point to be able to do those things, right? And as we go, further and further, you start to see that, how do you remove it, and how do you create the momentum or the understanding, anyone that's seeing from the outside, that you're not going to be stopped by anything in front of you, and that they need to add their train car to the locomotive that you are, and that you're not going to be stopping at the stations. They have to catch up to you.
I love that. It's super, again, important for everyone to kind of like realize about the journey, and it's too often. And I said this earlier during our pitch to the peers like workshop, that people fail because they're rushing ahead and they're too focused on like getting to that destination, either out of pure excitement for their ambition or desperation, right? And so it's very important to go slow and steady, and really find ways to find fulfillment and enjoyment and passion about the journey, even if it's challenging and difficult. But yeah, like the more you're taking care of, like your emotional self, your physical self, the more likely you are to be innovative and successful and enjoy doing it along the way, while also making less sacrifices that are completely needless in most cases.
Yeah, it's
So
not all
yeah.
like it's not all rainbows and unicorns in that, right? Like I think it was Jensen, and I always like butcher, so I'm not going to say the quote, but the gist of it was is that I would, if someone told me everything that I would go through to create Nvidia, right? He's like, I wouldn't I wouldn't have done it, right? I wouldn't do it again, right? And the entrepreneur's journey is not one for the weak, right? You have to be extremely resilient, because you're just going to go through, you know intense moments, right? In general, and you have to prepare yourself for that too, so.
Yeah, I appreciate that. We got a question from Benny Manisharov. Uh, Apologies, my speech is very impeded. That said, the question is, what do you think the job of VC actually is?
It depends, right? That's a broad answer, right? Because I think that's also a broad question. The point of a VC can be strategic. They can be just solely money, right? The reason why it's venture capital is because it's capital that's not able to be brought into a company in the conventional methods, right? Conventional banking methods that are out there. So they're filling a gap based off of a thesis of people that have been uh, based off a thesis that others have entrusted that hive mind of that whatever that VC company is, to make the educated and strategic, uh, let's call it wins, right, for putting that money in. And so one company might be very hands on, another company might be very hands off. So that range is wide and broad out there, right? So yeah.
I appreciate that answer too. Hopefully, that's helping people kind of grasp a little bit more about the different roles that are necessary for businesses. Um, I want to like touch on something else that Benny said, because we're talking about fundraising, and Benny said that seed stage is, wait, where'd it go? Where'd it go? Did you delete it? Oh, seed is 1 million annual recurring revenue. And I think this is really important to talk about because too often people think about the different fundraising stages disconnected from the stage that a product or business is in its life cycle, right? Because when you're at certain stages in the product life cycle or the business life cycle, there's very specific milestones you're trying to achieve. For example, I referenced Startup Genome's life cycle stages for startups, which defines it as, or listed as discovery, which is trying to figure out what you want to bring to the market and who it's for. Then there's the validation stage, which is you enter the market and you're proving that the market wants your product. Not only wants it, but you're able to achieve product market fit, where the customers, the clients are so enthralled with what you've provided them, they are consistently using it, in some cases more and more. They're more engaged, and they start become your marketing team on their own without any incentives. They start being like, "Oh, dude, you gotta try this. This is awesome. This use this for you too, right?" And from that step, there's efficiency where you really dial in all your operation systems and your workflows, so you're prepared to scale. And then scaling comes after that. And so going back to this idea that Seed is 1 million annual recurring revenue, I feel like that's very disconnected from the actual stage of the product or the business, because 1 million annual recurring revenue could be a company that is past its seed stage, or it could be a company that isn't, quite there yet, right? So I'm curious your take, Blake, in regards to, as an investor, but also as a founder, how you reconcile the fundraising stage with the stage that you're at in a product life cycle or the business life cycle.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's really key and important to touch on in general, right? And to your point, like there's industry standards, right? And then there's the lens I have on it, where it's like getting into the semantics of what a seed stage means, right? Friends and family round is, right? There's a reason why that there is pre-seed, right? There's reason why that there is safe notes, right? You know, uh, uh, you know, in the variety, in pre-seed, seed plus round, pre-A round, like all of these things are out there for those reasons, because they do need the categorization, but they also need to fit into sort of like, hey, when you do approach a potential investor, whether that's an angel, super angel, VC, family office, whatever it looks like, just the dynamics of it overall, right? So I think what it is that in general in VC, right, as long as you can back up what your statements are, that is going to run its course and run through, right? So if it is in that case where it's like, yeah, well, as soon as a company is able to hit 1 million in recurring revenue, they kind of don't need to raise any money in the future, right? It's sort of like also the stage in their life cycle of what allows them to scale, because essentially that's where the money is there for. It's not because, yeah, you're trying to scale your company to have the infrastructure, to have the headcount, to be able to build a product, to do whatever it is that functionality is, or the next stage in evolution of the company, right? So if it's defensible of why you're raising the money for a seed round based off of these criteria, right, versus an A round and the rest, then that's where it comes from. I guess that's my roundabout way of answering the question. So, yeah.
I like it. Roundabout ways are good. Again, like all of this too. Like I love these office hours and conversations, because hopefully it's just helping people think about things in different ways, which you know is a great exercise in critical thinking, which is something that a lot of people are not practicing enough, whether by choice because they're deferring too much to, say, ChatGPT for everything, or just because of, people get distracted on different things and overwhelmed. I'm one of those people. So yeah, I really enjoy it. We got some more questions, which is great. Let's take a look at uh, Zapanik. I'm gonna post this one because it's a long one. Give me one moment. One moment. Post it over here and start motto. We're hanging out together. And also, hello Anthony, hello Boy, and hello William over here on Start Motto. Always fun to see you all hanging out. And Antoni, we'll get your question right after this one. All right. So, hey Blake, nice to hear your take. As a founder from EU, actively seeking investments for scaling on physical business, in parentheses, I build tech-forward neighborhood fitness clubs. Currently bootstrapped to 15 locations now, but I feel inside like 100 to 400 clubs across Europe is doable. What is the average VCs, or what is the average X VCs are looking for? Are they preferring a moonshot, or are they comfortable with steady 7X over 3 to 5 years? Past 14 months, 15% month over month growth. CAPEX per location is 80K. Solid AI tooling infrastructure. 50% profit margins. 0 full-time employees. Gyms are automated. And serving thousands entries daily. Our VC scene is so small that we turned down 2 funds already. Is there any chance of landing US investor in EU? We do 1 million plus annual recurring revenue on Stripe, and Angel IPO'd before. That's really impressive. You've
Yeah.
built a real business. So first of all, 100% success there, and kudos to you. You've done something that probably 90% of all entrepreneurs can ever accomplish. So phenomenal. All right, Blake, with that said, what do you got?
Yeah, I mean, it's one aspect of it, right? It actually sounds like the franchise model out of the, is ripe for this, right? Where someone gets a territory, they buy into the territory, and then now they get the country, the city, the region, the province, etc., whatever that might be. So that's something to possibly consider. I don't know if you have, and yada yada. Yes, there's various regions around the world where they have a little bit less, um, um, Gary, is this a follow up to that, or is it?
No, no, it's a next person question.
Okay,
Yeah,
okay.
yeah, yeah.
So sorry. um, so yeah. Sometimes there's let's call it VC deserts or funding deserts that are out there. There are like funds in the U.S. that do make investments that are overseas, and there's very specific ones. I was talking to a guy on a call a few weeks ago, right, where he is like a direct, like I don't know, let's call it ambassador, or uh, connector for like Central America, right? For companies in Central America that can be utilized in the U.S., et cetera. So I think that's what you just need to look into, is where the funds are that do investment into EU and everything. The fact that you turned down 2 funds, I'm sure it's because the deal stipulations that were attached to it were not favorable. And it's great that you're in that. It seems like you're in a place where you can grow steadily, right? But then the financial consideration that could come into would be to scale aggressively. Again, to Gary's point, this is like a real company, and that's what people really need to be looking at. It's like my investment. I think part of it, it's like the moonshot versus comfortable with steady growth. I think there's appetite for both, right? Especially in something like this where they know it's like they're getting X return, right? The proof is in the pudding in front of it as well. So like to just say bluntly, you are onto something, and you need to find strategic investors that are around it. Even with it, if it's not even the VC scene, look up family offices. This seems a lot more right, because you're essentially doing location based, technology enablement around location based, which that's what a lot of people are looking at right now. How to like combat the AI world that's out there in the digital sense, and a lot of the location based kind of stuff is around them. I know in the U.S. there's an issue around loneliness where 70% of the entire country is considering themselves lonely, and I know that there's many other countries around the world that are like that too, where you're also giving a space for that community that a lot of people are looking for as well. Um, I this sounds really cool, so I just got to say, like, congrats to what you've done. It's really impressive. So hopefully that answers, but I think in this regard, I don't think someone's going to be like, yeah, this needs to be a moonshot opportunity. It might be when you go from your 15 to 50 clubs, or locations, that someone's like, okay, how do we scale this on a global scale, or how do we scale this for all of Europe to take over? And that's the 400 club element, right? That is the moonshot, if you will. So, yeah.
I love it. Let's take a look at Antony's question over here in Startmata. And Antony says, "Hey Blake, I'm 18 from Poland. I built an AI tool that analyzes trading charts through the strategies of legends like Soros and Jim Simmons. I upload a chart, pick a trader, and get entry SLTP in seconds. I launched last week. My question is, how would you get the first 100 paying users as fast as possible? This may raise a couple red flags for you as well, which I would love to hear your thoughts on outside of the initial first question."
Um, yeah, I mean, like, there's also like questions of follow up to this too, right? Because there's so much there. Um, I would say, is this actually proven? What does it really look like? What is the risk and liability that you are going to be incurring through this? And if that is all taken shape, I would say the best way to get to first 100 paying users, right, is a freemium model where, yeah, they can use it for a month, however long, etc. But where it needs to go beyond that is where they, to unlock it for longer term, right? Or if you have a scaled down version where people can use for free just to like mess around on, even play with, fake $1,000 to see where it goes for themselves based on whatever, blah, blah, blah. And then, it drives the users into paying essentially. That's usually, freemium is a quote new word, because of tech, going back 10 plus 15 years ago, but it's being used because that does work as a way. So, yeah. What else do you see, Gary? Now that I'm curious. So, yeah.
Wait, sorry, what else do I see where?
Yeah, the red flag just on
Oh, just yeah, just the fact that no offense, Antony, it's just from a legal standpoint, the fact that you're analyzing trading charts and investing and stuff like this, like there's likely potential for liability on your part if you're not presenting this appropriately, to be like, we're not giving you like investment advice, this is more like a game, or like like framing it like that, there might be issues there. Yeah,
like
I don't
like
know.
from the technical side of it, right? Especially if you're talking to anyone in the U.S., even if you're outside of the U.S., right? There's SEC scrutiny, so you're going to have to like just make sure that you are within 100% all the protocols of anyone that you're dealing with, right? KYC is important. This goes back to like blockchain days and things like that, with when the digital KYC and AMA, so anti money, sorry, AML, anti money laundering, things that are out there. You're opening yourself up to a bunch of things there. But all that to be said is not to criticize. It's more of just make sure that all your ducks are in a row. So then you have something like that. If it is the type of thing where you just want to prove it out and get a bunch of data to make sure, but buy a bunch of users, don't have it actually trading any money and having it essentially trading, fake $1,000. Like, I remember that's the exercise we did in econ class in high school, where here's $1,000 and whoever has the most at the end of the day or at the end of the term has, I don't know, got like a free candy bar from the teacher. So that kind of thing.
I remember that.
Exactly.
I was one of those kids, probably ADHD, OCD, and a bunch of other fun stuff that like I didn't do good in any class that I didn't immediately find like a passion in. But economics, I was like, oh, this is fun. A.
Yeah,
Everything else
exactly.
I got D's, except like yeah, like photography. But yeah, I love it. But yeah, like when we say stuff like this, when we're like talking about red flags or like concerns, yeah, it's definitely important. Everyone listening, it's not to put you down or tell you that this is a bad idea so much as you need to do the proper research and talk to the right professionals to ensure that you know how to find the path forward if this is something that you're really interested in. And you know, the other thing too, and like this comes up a lot during the pitch workshops that we do. There's a lot of ideas that have been tried and done a billion times and have failed, and there might be one or two that are very successful at it, but it's an exercise in understanding why those before you failed. What went right, what went wrong, and how can you figure out a way to succeed where they didn't, and just be very honest about that and vulnerable, and don't hide. Like, don't hide what you're working on from others. And this goes back to the loneliness aspect. Like, and Blake, you can touch on this too, but so much of entrepreneurship culture and even like that like A type personality of you just grind and work all the time, and you gotta fight for your success. Like so much of that is designed to falsely make you isolated and think that you're a lone wolf and that's like a cool thing. It's not. You're a human being. We all need social interactions. Blake, you got a sociology degree, right?
Yes.
Yeah. All right, so you can chime in a lot more on this. But yeah, this idea that like to be successful you need to abandon and sacrifice human interactions with others, and worse than that, if you are going to have any human interactions, it's got to be with other entrepreneurs, other people in your field, or sharing that same ambition. But that's so gross. It's so unhealthy. Like you want to lean into whatever hobbies you may have, whatever passions you may have, and explore and find new stuff. That's going to lend itself to not only have you be more supported and more likely to succeed, but you're also going to have a more you're going to have a higher likelihood of being innovative because you're able to pull from so many more sources and create a larger tool set to work with. Blake, any thoughts, comments on that while I
No, I know. I mean,
force more
there's
questions?
tons, right? Like community is really key and important in with quote digital age, right? Um, sorry, it's just such an old term. Like we have community at our fingertips from all over, right? If you look at sort of like the reason why solitary confinement in prison is so scary to prisoners is because that complete isolation drives people mad, right? Whether it's a few hours in it, a few hours feels like weeks, right? A few days feels like years, right? And it drives people crazy, and that just goes to show you what extreme loneliness looks like, right? People ask me all the time, they're like, "Why do you go to so many networking events?" Or like, "Why do you blah blah blah?" I'm like, I don't see them as networking events. I see it being around. There's an energy, right? And I think like what is the new term? It's like aura stealing, not aura stealing, but
Or farming.
aura farming, right?
Yeah,
And
I'm
it's like
online way too much.
but it's it's exactly that, right? It's aura. There is something to that aura farming if you want, right? But you go out there and all of a sudden you meet that random person and you have that cool, great conversation, and things come to fruition. And you guys could even be competitors and you're talking around things and it might even inspire you, like, oh yeah, I've been working on this while you've been working on this, and it's in conjunction or whatever, right? Or just in the mere fact of like being around your peers. Like people think like, oh, it's a networking event. I'm like, no, I'm seeing my friends there, right? I'm excited to see my friends, to be able to hang out with them that are all on their various journeys doing all these different things, whether it's same industry, doing something completely random and different. Maybe there's alignment and partnerships, whatever all those things look like, right? But that is community, that is being around it. And it comes down to just enhancing what you're up to, and even going back to like, here's a real example of it. Spoke at a festival thing, right? And met a guy afterwards who was a very you know, high CTO person and phenomenal work and stuff like that. And we have a call every few months to touch base and talk to him fairly recently, right? And it was like, yeah, hey, this is what we're up to. Completely, very different things, but the conversation allows us to get through and understand, where other people are thinking, where people are making their stab, we'll call it, right? And what their journey is too, right? And so if you say the right things, not that you're trying to say the right things, but if you say things that end up being right or validated, you're in this in a world where you're able to share and you know have the positivity behind it too, right? And even an example of that, bless you, Gary. And even an example of that is 805 startups, right? And these office hours, right, where people are able to say, hey, this is what I'm working on, this is what I'm doing, and they hear validation. They hear, hey, have you thought about this? Make sure you think about this because here's this thing. When you're in isolation, it is impossible to think of every single possible thing that you need to be worried about and looking at, right? You need to be able to have advisors, experts, friends, whatever, watching your back. So,
It's awesome. I appreciate the call out to what I'm doing over here, and always appreciate your help like this. We got more questions though. Let's check them out. Next up is wait, first Zapanik said thank you. We'll look into that. Deals were like 25% of the company for $1 million loan, which was predatory. Yes. Metagym.fitness is the URL. It's fun to build, but franchising sucks. Thank you, Blake. Any comments to that?
yeah, I mean, what I wouldn't see like a VC as like $1 million loan. That's yeah. Again, to the point, it sounds predatory, right? So just make sure you're aligning yourself in the right way. Yeah, franchising sucks. Yes, yeah, yeah. It can be a totally different. There's so many dynamics that are out there that you can scale, right? It seems like you're on a steady route to it, being profitable, et cetera. And it'll be exciting to follow along and see what you're up to. So yeah.
All right, great. All right, so the next question is from Tim. Tim asked, why does there seem to be so much money given to those just out of college raising in niche markets who simply come from pedigree and don't have merit in those niche markets? It seems to heavily tarnish VC as a whole that relies on its branding of having any sort of financial or market competence. Is this some low bar, find a bag holder strategy, or is something else occurring here? A16Z seems to be hilariously overt proponent of handing out low merit money. Not being salty, I swear. Um, yeah, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's very very smart people in VCs, right? And at the same time, there can be people who, let's call it. I don't think that there's dumb people out there. I just think that there's people who don't have the the correct information or whatever to make informed to make themselves appear smart, if you will, right? Everyone has a purpose and can be intelligent. It just needs to be directed in the right way. So to kind of go into that, um, let me go back up to the question. It keeps jumping down. So I think that there's a variety of this. I actually know someone who got money that was out of school, but how that happened is because they were like part of like a kind of like a laboratory, if you will, that was a direct connection to these big funders, and they had a mentor who was connected to these big funders. So they were essentially being watched for like 2 to 3 years as they were like drumming stuff out, right? That's not always the case. Nepotism is a big thing, right? As my mentor, ultra high net worth individual would say, like, you can't choose your parents, right? So there's so much involved in it overall. And it is a lot of VCs do have it, kind of the spray mentality of like, okay, here's 100 companies that we're deploying into, and at least one of those is going to be 100x or whatever it is, right? Or 1000x, 10x. Like they have their entire metrics that are baked into what they're doing, and so they're like, yeah, let's just use this as horse betting, if you will, right? Just don't know. This one looks good. Don't even know which one this looks good. I was doing the math one time years ago, and I won't say what companies or anything like that, but the amount that this company, this VC, had to deploy within a year basically made it where they were having to write checks that were sub $5 million at least once a week, and if not more than that. It was like, I think it was like every 4 days, 4.5 days, they had to deploy $5 million, and their check sizes were between half a million to 5 million. And so when you look at that, if that's a $500,000 check every, like 10 $500,000 checks every 4.5 days, that's a crap ton of money that's going out there that's quickly going, right? And so that's that exact model that's happening there, yada yada. Find a bag holder, I'm not sure it's necessarily that, right? Because they also have to make it defensible to their LPs that are putting the money in. Like, why did you do this? Otherwise, there can be a lot of like legal legal issues that come into play on it too. So yeah, so yes, there's the call it youngsters who right out of school that are getting money, right? And then there's older guys like me, mid 40s, that are still hustling to do fundraising, right? So yeah.
Oh, okay. I keep saying I love it because like it's like I just default to my brain because I'm enjoying this and I always like yeah like appreciate all your wonderful insights and commentary on this. I can't help myself. All right, John
And
Paulson.
hopefully these are actually
Yeah.
answering the questions too, because I know sometimes my answers are non-answers at the same time.
Yeah, yeah. But yeah, if anyone has follow up questions to what you're hearing from Blake, don't be shy. You can press back. You can ask for elaboration, whatever it is. Again, that's why Blake's here to help you out. So don't be shy. Rambo, we'll get to you next. We got John Paulson going right before you over here on Start Model where we're doing this. All right, so John Paulson asks, and this is the one at the very bottom over here. Can you explain, like I'm five, the importance of short and long term lending facilities for businesses of any size to me, please? Can businesses become too reliant on credit, loans, or is it genuinely very hard to operate as a going concern without those facilities?
Yeah, I mean, so interesting thing on that, right, is that one of the first things someone should do when they do get a raise is, say they raise $5 million, but get an LOC, right, line of credit, and just use that even if you don't need it, whatever, but just set it up, because then there's cash there that is able to be backed upon. You can't do it later on. Yeah, you can do it when you have 4 million left in the bank, 3 million left in the bank, but the more it starts dwindling out, the lower the line of credit is going to be for you. Um, like with anything, right? Be responsible when you're getting loans, when you're getting any sort of type of lending thing like that, because what's going to end up happening is that like you see with credit cards out there in general, there's people that are very responsible with it, are paying it back on a monthly basis, and then there's others that are irresponsible, call it, where accumulation, and then they're stuck in a cycle that they cannot get out of, right? Everyone has their own thing, right? Everyone has their own ability, right? I would also say that when you're looking at sort of short term and long term lending facilities that to help out, make sure that you are looking at what your ability to pay it back is, right? If you're using a loan to then say, like, it's a physical product that you have, like, terms are 180 days or something super super long, right? Make sure that you are getting receivables from that. Don't use your loan to then loan someone else essentially money, right? Because that's what it could turn into, and then if they default on you, you're kind of screwed. But just make sure that all your practices, your best practices that you would typically want to do is in order too. So hopefully that's a ELI 5 on the, yeah.
Again, feel free to ask follow ups. All right, Rambo asks, how do you target distribution specifically for a solo developer? What should their approach be? How should someone go about pitching software products built specifically for corporations or enterprises? Can you walk us through the entire process of marketing and securing deals with your most successful project till now? Any advice for marketing distribution for solo devs? So there's four like questions here from Rambo that you'll see. They're, again, might be a little bit, that second one difficult to get into the entirety, or excuse me, the third
Yeah.
one, the entirety of your process, but at least like helping everyone understand the step by step process that's involved there. And I do love the idea of using an example of like your most successful project, which might be the most recent one, it seems.
Yeah. So how do you target distribution? Find your niche, get into it, right, and start getting active users with it, right. Target distribution can be where you need a reseller that's involved, a company I advise and just friends with and stuff like that. Actually, the ones who made this hat. Um, it's because I saw Michaela um, comment on it already, but so yeah, so if that's a route that you need for distribution, if you need the one-on-one conversations and stuff like that, if you are a solo developer and you don't have those mechanisms, you need to find someone who is the proficient one and the professional there. It depends on what your marketplace can be, how big the total addressable market is as well, right, and what your targeted addressable market, right. So if you are a solo developer, you might want to find the people that can activate you to go further. Just tons of it depends responses are going to come into play here. And how should someone go about pitching software products built specifically for corporations and large
Sorry if I just
enterprises?
made it jump.
What's that?
Sorry, I just posted another question if I made it
Oh
jump
no,
on
no, it
you.
actually stayed there for whatever reason. So no, no. Yeah, yeah. So with question number two, um, yeah, like how would you go about it? You need to have conversations and you need to get your foot in the door and know who is who and who is actually making the decisions, right? If you're just addressing someone randomly at a company and they just happen to work there, know the lane that they're in, especially for corporations and large enterprises and stuff like that too. Just know who you're talking to and how you're talking to them. And then a process of marketing and securing deals with most successful project till now. Um, yeah, that's super huge, like stack question. Apologies. It's just going to take way too much time to go into it and also to explain even what some of the things are as well. But it depends, right? If you're trying to create inbound stuff, then you need to do outbound marketing, and how you position your product, right? And what is the ROI for a company as well, which goes back to the pitching part of it. When you are in that pitch meeting, it can't just be like, hey, this is a cool software, this is a cool product. They have to know how much they are going to have to spend to have this integrated into their entire infrastructure, if it is that type of thing, and then what they're going to get out of it, right? Because it might just be, it might be thinking that, hey, this is just the price of that SaaS, of that software, whatever it is. But no, there's a huge other costs to the integration of it, and also the upkeep of the training on it too, right? If it is the type of thing where people need to be trained on it, are there enough people in the world that know how to even use it? Anything like that. What are those mechanisms, and what happens when something goes down? Are you protected and things like that too? So yeah.
Yeah, I was just posting. Yeah, the bigger the company, the more risk at scale. Costs go up, even when accounting for only the labor hours to train and use it. And then, there's other labor hours to if it's a tool meant to replace something, right? How many labor hours does it take to remove what was already being utilized and then integrate your solution, right? And again, like if you're going to a small operation with like like again like a solo dev, it might be a lot easier. But then if you're going to like a dev shop with like say 50 employees and all these different active systems already at work, like getting like that whole team to do that, that's a much more substantial like cost and risk to them. So it's
Mm-hmm.
really important. I appreciate you drawing lines to these other factors that a lot of people don't realize when they're pitching their services, their product to potential clients and customers, that there's so many different moving parts that already exist in their their processes, their systems, that you're going to disrupt, right, for good or bad. But even if it's for good, there's still a risk and a cost associated with that. So very, very good to call attention to that. We've got a question from Slayer Darth. Blake, what is your experience in dealing with cross-cultural distributed teams? I used to work for one of the Indian IT companies, TCS, and even though I come from a multiracial background, there were still some language barriers, even though I did my best to explain myself to them multiple times. How do you deal with communication issues with those from other cultures?
Yeah, I'm just reading through the question because I was also trying to find it out at the same time. Yeah, that's really good. I would say it's like I say this for everything, right? And so this can be applied here, and everything is used loosely. Never say never. Um, but it's like understanding the constructs that you're operating in is the easiest way to kind of like reel it all the way back to like what is the most simplest terms to view, right? And so it's like if the constructs are X, right, then you know that you have to go through and experience it that way. Always come down to the lowest common denominator, right? Which it just means that like understand where that where you are aligned, right? And then how can you build further alignment as you start stacking up from there in complexity, if you will, right? And so what it means is that like you can't make certain cultures, you can't make jokes because they just don't make sense, right? Certain cultures um, you cannot be hopeful that they're going to draw the creative conclusion of what is in your mind, right? Certain cultures you have to be so literal and so specific that a comma can adjust where what they're going to be doing is, right. Other times, what are their methods of translation? Um, are they not native, but are they fluent or fluid in whatever language that you're speaking in, right? Or how they're also communicating within the team, because then you can get the issue of telephone happening too. So there's all these particulars that are out there. There's even more, right? And it's how do you kind of chunk through those and just know, again, what is the construct that you're working in and how can you best approach it? And also, really like leaning into people who understand the cultural nuances that are out there that can even help guide you when you're hitting some of the barriers that you might be experiencing too. I think the great thing about, let's call it, various AI LLMs that are out there, even some of the image generating things. Like I use an example where it's like I can describe a scene of a trees blowing in the wind, right? A body of water that's a lake with an island in the middle, and the sun is shining, and what you all just imagine is completely different from each other, right? And what you can do though is, because a picture can't, pictures 1,000 words, is that you can say use AI to generate an image and not to copy it or anything, but say this is what I'm talking about, right? Because that sun could be at 12 o'clock or it could be approaching sunset, right? It could be morning. There could be all these other things that your mind and your own experiences has put into that scene. Is it misty? Is it foggy? Right? Is there, sun is shining, and yes, there's like dew that's on the grass that's in front of you, right? The trees, it could be dirt everywhere, not grass, right? Everyone has their own experience of it, and so that's the mindset that I would look at distributed teams that are cross cultural. So
I love that you said this because I brought this up earlier when we were doing the landing page pitch workshop. Because a lot of people in their pitch and then also on their landing page, they don't show us their product in action. And I don't mean like a video, I hate that, but I mean like storyboarding it, just showing us step by step images of what it's like to experience the product from screen to screen to achieve a very specific user experience that you're providing to people, and then the benefits of that, so that people can understand if it's going to be enjoyable for them and provide them benefits and value, right? And we talk about this all the time, Blake. But I love that you just said that in that way, because it just reinforces that when you're not providing people with enough information, you're relying on them to imagine things. And as you said, everyone's going to imagine something different, and it's going to disrupt their ability or your ability to set expectations that you're going to meet, because you have no control over what they're imagining. So
Yep, exactly.
yeah, I love that.
Expectations and assumptions, right?
Yeah, yep,
You have to set the groundwork for those two things
yeah,
in context, understanding context.
yeah. Context is key to everything. Say it all the time. All right, these two questions go together: rheometry and chard. Rheometry asks, "Hi, I work for Re-Envision AI, and I was wondering, in your experience, what's the best way to get a good chance at getting investment for a startup?" Chard's question, which follows this, is, "I dislike using this term, but what superpower have you seen founders with? Or what superpower do you wish founders have?" Which plays into how you can appeal to investors.
Yeah. So since it is around what is the best way to get a good chance at investing, marry someone extremely rich. Sorry.
I agree. I've been working on that. I'm still, yeah, struggling. But if you have
No,
any friends, let me know.
it a lot in terms of VC is your network and who you know and stuff like that. So make sure that you do get in front of as many people as possible. Know what your weak points are, right? So best, for one person is not best for another, is because it's best. It should be best for you, right? So understand where your weak points are and turn those into, the follow up question of that, right? All is, what is the superpower, right? Your superpower should be using your inabilities to turn into your abilities, right? And so if you don't have the network, what's the next best thing? Amass it, right? And do it in the most efficient and effective way that's authentic at the same time. Approach. If some people are like, yeah, I just called 10 friends and 5 of them said yes, right? Other people, they have to talk to 10,000 people to get 5 yeses. So figure out what that metric is overall. Everyone's is completely different. Go from there. And then there's the follow up to that around the superpower, and wish that founders had. Again, it's always going to be based off of the construct of who that person is, what that company is. I would say not so much like superpower, but I think it is the ability to work in very dynamic settings, right? Understanding people. People is extremely important in the world, right? And how to balance, because you need to be able to function and communicate and explain, essentially what you're doing to so many, and also create the momentum behind the vision that's there too. I would say that the best superpower is someone who does not let a roadblock turn into a dead end. It's just a right turn, then quick left, and then they're around that roadblock kind of scenario. So
Love it. Okay, I know we're coming up on time, but we got some more questions. So Blake, you tell me how flexible you are, or we will unfortunately not be able to get to some of these.
unfortunately, you know me, so I do have the 2 o'clock cutoff.
Okay,
Maybe
okay,
by 30 seconds, but it
okay.
all works. Yeah.
All right. So you've got a few questions to choose from. Your pick. Your pick.
Just pick one. Let's go for it.
Oh my gosh. Sorry, I'm trying to look. Oh, here's one that's relevant to you. Geomarriage says, "Hi, build an app that helps people decide what to eat based on how they feel. From your experience at NVIDIA HP optimizing systems at scale, what's the most important signal you'd focus on early to know if something like this can become a daily use product?" This is something that every early stage founder is probably struggling with in terms of their ideas and bringing it to market.
Yeah. Most important signal you'd focus on early to know is something like this can become a daily use product. You have to get it out in the world. no one can actually dictate it and see in advance if it's going to be something that everyone's going to use or not, right? Get as much feedback as possible, right? When you're wanting something that it needs to go far and wide, you need to get as much feedback as possible, and just getting that information, how you're going to then implement that information as well, how to gain that feedback. That's all pretty key there, right? And you can do that in a variety of stair-stepping ways, where it's a crawl, walk, run. Being aware of, there's so many apps that are out there where they never even started out that in the very, very beginning. And what happened is that they pivoted because that's where that technology was able to then find and fill a niche in. So, yeah.
Okay. Uh, what do you want to do, Blake? You done, or one
Like one
more?
more question, and then
Okay.
and then
Let's
and
let's
say goodbye.
let's 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 do whimsical culture. Love the AI AF hat, Blake. It's Michaela. I'm building an AI enabled health tech app. Some would call it femtech, as it's a fertility app for IVF patients. Given this niche is so narrow, what would you advise I do when sourcing potential investors and mentors? I have been assessed by multiple VCs who tell me the idea is valid and there's genuine product market fit, or problem market fit. My blocker has been that the majority of VCs right now are men, and everyone so far is pushing me towards specialized female-founded VC firms. In summary, is there validity to finding mentors in VC PE firms with subject matter expertise, or can it also be helpful to branch beyond this? Do I have a shot with regular firms? I think this is brilliant because it again applies to every founder, and I said this earlier and I say it all the time. This is all a matchmaking game. Matchmaking with the right potential co-founders, teammates, strategic partners, everything, advisors, investors, everything. So this plays into that. So I'd love to hear your thoughts on this.
Yeah. Hi, Michaela. And so with this, I think it's really important to kind of key in and understand that, um, don't let go to where, let's call it, the honeypot is, right? Go to where it is the complete fit, and then branch out from there, right? I would say that yes, there are so many, male domination, in the in the industry is there, et cetera, et cetera. We all know this. Percentages even anymore. I'm assuming that it's skewing where there's more females within VC firms in general. Some are going to be very dismissive, but also because it is a, let's call it, a family app, right? Family AI health tech app, for IVF, right? And so family can mean so many different things. So that's why it's using that as a broad term, and and which could be even another way to penetrate into some of the more male dominated VCs that are out there, where understanding that it is for IVF, and so many people have gone through so many different. There are men who've experienced that with their partner, right? That are out there, and you might be able to tap into some of them that actually understand it, and they'll get it immediately too. So with it, it's just understanding the construct that you're operating in, and how you can then create something that does match up to them of what they're actually looking for as well. So yeah.
That's okay. Awesome. Thank you so much. I am really apologize for people who we didn't get to your question, but just be aware that the fact that you came here and asked questions and put yourself out there and was vulnerable is a huge, huge feather in your cap as a founder and a leader. It's so important. So feel really proud about yourself. Blake will be back here in a month. Blake, one of our regular mentors, because you're amazing and you're just so gracious with your time and mind to help me and help others. So thank you for that. Do you have any final thoughts before you go? Any announcements? Anything to say?
Yeah, no, I mean, overall, just want to again thank you for having this community and creating this space, right? I think it's extremely important. It's why I do this. Just very passionate about where the world is going and where the world is taking. I think in general, something that I've said quite a few times on this is constructs, and how you operate within those constructs that are around you. of whatever you're developing and deploying, right? Certain things that might work well for you might not work well for another person. So understand what your quote superpowers are to take that from someone else's, question, right? Understand your superpowers and make the things that are not your superpowers your, you know, something that empowers you, right? I come from a cycling background and everything like that. And people ask me like, how do I get faster? I say, when you feel pain, do you back off or do you lean into it and push through even harder, right? If you lean back, you're going to fail. That's not how you become stronger, right? By pushing through and also knowing the limitations, because you might, overexert yourself because of things, right? But that's, I feel, is a pretty good analogy. So thanks everyone for your time, and
Yeah, thank you so much. Go
see you next
Dodgers, go
time.
Lakers.
Yes.
Yeah. All right, take care,
All
Blake.
right.
You're
See you guys.
wonderful. Bye. Yeah, those of you that are hanging out in Discord, feel free to post any of the questions that we didn't get to into the appropriate channels. Same thing for those of us over on Start Mata. If you have any questions, especially specifically for Blake on Start Mata, because he's one of our mentors there, I will try to do my best to send him to those questions to answer directly. Otherwise, yeah, Blake will be back next month, and I really appreciate it. And thank you so much for everyone being good community members and helpful for each other. Feel free to, share advice with each other too. All right, take care, everyone.